The text of the message is taken today from Luke chapter 23, verses 33 and 34. You may wonder what this has to do with heaven, but if you'll just give me maybe 5 to 10 minutes of your attention, I think you'll understand where I'm going. When they came to a place called the Skull, the soldiers crucified Jesus and the criminals, one on his right and the other on his left. And Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, because they don't know what they're doing." In this picture, you can see the soldiers are throwing dice to see who would get Jesus' clothes. The crowds just stood there, I think, watching this train wreck. They didn't want to stare, but they probably just couldn't take their eyes away. And the religious leaders made fun of Jesus, saying, "Well, he saved others. Let him save himself if he is God's chosen one, the Christ." You can read that in verse 35 of our text. The soldiers, between the rolls of the dice, took turns taunting Jesus, coming to him and offering him cheap wine that had gone stale just to prolong Jesus' torture. They said, "If you're the king of the Jews, then save yourself." And at the top of the cross, these words were written, "This is the King of the Jews." Then one of the criminals being crucified began to shout insults at Jesus. "Aren't you the Christ? Well, if so, then save yourself and us." But the other criminal stopped him and said, "You should fear God. You're getting the same punishment he is. We are punished justly, getting what we deserve for what we did. But this man, he's done nothing wrong." And then that criminal said to Jesus, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus' reply, "I tell you the truth. Today, you'll be with me in paradise." So my question of you is, do you believe in heaven? And if you do you think you'll go there? And if you think you'll go there, how do you know? I know how I know, and I thought I would share that with you this morning. I know I'm going because I have a list. A list. I am dependable. I go to work. I go to church. I don't cheat on my taxes. I don't beat my dog. Right? That's the list. And there is a pretty good chance that you've got your own list too. It's a list of our qualifications. It's as if heaven can be earned, at least in my book, through hard work and responsible pet ownership. And the line of logic, I believe, is fairly simple. We keep the list on earth, and then ding, 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 we get a seat in heaven. So if you keep a list like I do, what's on yours? The truth is, we think that we're basically good, decent, hardworking folks, and we have our list to prove it. Now, maybe yours doesn't include work or taxes or responsible pet ownership, but you probably have a list, and maybe your list includes, well, at least I pay my bills, or I love my spouse and I love my children, or I'm better than Hitler, or I'm basically a good person. Most of us have a list because there is a purpose for having a list. It is to prove that we are good. But there's a problem with that premise. None of us are good enough. And Paul made this point abundantly clear when he strategically placed 2 sticks of dynamite in the 3rd chapter of his letter to the church in Rome. The first is in verse 10, where he says, "There is no one who always does what is right," he wrote, "not even one." Not one. No one. Not you, not me, not anyone. And then the second explosion occurs in 13 verses later in verse 23. All have sinned and are not good enough for God's glory. So much for your list, and so much for mine. So much for being basically good people. Well, if that's true, then how do we get to heaven? If no one is good, if no list is sufficient, if no achievements are adequate, how can a person possibly be saved? And frankly, church, no question is more crucial than that. And to hear Jesus' answer to that question, I want you to then follow me to the last encounter he had before he gave up his spirit. It's an encounter between Jesus and 2 criminals. And all 3 of them, as you know, are being crucified. Now, you could think that these 2 thieves are victims, undeserving of their punishment, or good men who got a bad rap, or maybe patriots dying a martyr's death, or products of a supremacist xenophobia. But that's not the case, church. Matthew dispatches that notion with just one verse, where he says in Matthew chapter 27, verse 44, "The robbers who were being crucified beside Jesus also insulted him." It seems that tragedy has a way of revealing a person's character. These 2 men who were being crucified with Jesus were robbers. And the tragedy of this crucifixion reveals that these 2 thieves had none. They slander Jesus with their last breath. I mean, can't you just hear them? Their voices kind of husky with pain. They're sneering at the Savior. And maybe they're saying, "Hey, some king of the Jews you are. Life's pretty tough on messiahs these days, eh? Or how about a little miracle here, Galilean? Or maybe, ever seen nails that size in Nazareth? Carpenter boy." Now, you'd expect that from the Pharisees because they set Jesus up. You might even expect it from the crowd. Maybe they hated Jesus. Even the mocking soldiers would not be surprising. But these statements are coming from thieves, crucified men insulting another crucified man. I mean, it's like 2 men with nooses on their necks ridiculing the third of his plight. Or like 2 POWs before a firing squad taunting the other one's misfortune. I mean, could anyone be more blind? Better yet, could anyone be more evil? Frankly, it's no wonder that these 2 guys are on the cross. Rome, their government, deems them worthy of an ugly, torturous death. Their only value to society at this point in time is to serve as a public spectacle. Strip them naked so that all will know that evil cannot hide. Nail their hands to a piece of wood so all will see that the wicked have no strength. Post them high so the adults can tell their kids that's what happens to evil men. Every muscle in their bodies is screaming for relief, and the nails are pulsing fire through their arms. Their legs are contorting and twisting because they're seeking comfort, but there's no comfort on a cross. Yet even the pain of the spikes won't silence their spiteful tongues. These two will die as they lived, by attacking the innocent. But in this case, the innocent does not retaliate. The man they were mocking was not much to look at. His body was whip-torn flesh that had been yanked away from the bone. His face was a mask of blood and spit. His eyes are puffy and swollen. King of the Jews is painted over his head. A crown of thorns has pierced his scalp. His lip is split. Maybe his nose is broken. Maybe his tooth is loose. The man these guys were mocking is already half dead. The man they were mocking was beaten. But the man they were mocking was at peace. Because in Luke 23, verse 34, Jesus says, Father, forgive them, because they don't know what they're doing. And after Jesus' prayers, one of the criminals starts again shouting insults at him. Aren't you the Christ? Well, then save yourself and us while you're at it. The heart of that particular thief remained hard. The presence of Christ crucified meant nothing to him. Jesus was worthy of ridicule, so what does the thief do? He ridicules. And he fully expected his chorus to be harmonized from the other side of the cross between him, but it wasn't. Instead, his mocking is challenged. Because the other thief then says, you should fear God. You're getting the same punishment he is, and we're punished justly, getting what we deserve for what we did. But this man has done nothing wrong. It's what Luke records for us in verses 40 and 41. And I find that almost unbelievable. The same mouth that had cursed Christ earlier now defends him. Which raises a question, at least in my mind, okay, so what happened? What could possibly have transpired since this man has been on the cross? Did he witness some sort of miracle? Did he hear a lecture? Was he read a treatise on the Trinity? No, none of that. In fact, according to Luke, all that guy heard was a prayer. And it was a prayer of grace. But that was enough. Something happens to a man who stands in the presence of God. And something happened to that thief. I want you to listen to his words again. We are punished justly, getting what we deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong. That is the core of the gospel in one sentence from the mouth of a thief. The essence of attorney through the mouth of a crook. Stated differently, I'm wrong, but Jesus is right. I have failed, Jesus has not. I deserve to die, Jesus deserves to live. The thief knew precious little about Jesus, but what he knew was precious indeed. He knew that an innocent man was dying an unjust death with no complaint whatsoever on his lips. And if Jesus can do that, he just might be who he says he is. So, the thief asks for help. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And I'm imagining the heavy head of Christ lifts, maybe and turns, and maybe the eyes of the two of them meet, and what Jesus sees is a naked man. And I don't mean naked in terms of absent clothing. I mean in terms of charades. Because this thief has no cover. This thief has no way to hide. And his title? Scum of the earth. His achievement? Death by crucifixion. His reputation? He's a crook. He's a criminal. And his character? Depraved until the last moment, until the final hour, until that last encounter, until now. And I want you to tell me, what has this man done to warrant Jesus' help? He's wasted his life. Who is he to beg for forgiveness? He publicly ridiculed Jesus Christ. What right does this guy have to say that kind of prayer? And do you really want to know the answer to that question? It's the same right you have to pray yours, and I have to pray mine. You see, that thief, that's you. That's me on that cross. Because we're naked. We're desolate. We're without hope. And we've been estranged because of sin. That's us. That's us asking, God, in spite of what I've done, in spite of what you see, is there any way you could remember me when we all get home? But this time, we don't boast. We don't produce our lists, because any sacrifice appears silly when placed before God on a cross. It's more than we deserve. But we're desperate. So we plead, as have so many others in the Bible that we read. The cripple, remember, at the pool of Bethesda. Mary at the wedding. Martha at the funeral. The demoniac in Gerasene. Nicodemus at night. Peter on the sea, Jairus on the trail, Joseph at the stable, and every other human being who has dared to stand before the Son of God and admit his or her need. And right now, we, like that thief, have one more prayer. And we, like that thief, we pray. And we, like the thief, hear that voice of grace. Today, you will be with me in paradise. And we, like the thief, are able to endure the pain, knowing that one day he'll take us home, even for a thief like me.